Welcome to White Slash. I'm glad to have you on my channel. Let's jump in today's story. This situation consists of me, F24, Viona, F20, and Axel, M24. Viona and I were never close. Viona was the youngest between me and her, so was always spoiled. She grew up to become a very lazy person who took every opportunity that came to her to seek help from my parents, our relatives, and me. So, I was always at a hand's distance away from her. This pissed my parents off as they expected us to have an amazing relationship from the get-go since we both were closer in ages and were girls. Makes no sense, I know. According to my enabling parents who just wanted to throw the responsibility of my sister onto my shoulders after they had passed away, this was more than enough and all that siblings needed to get along. Needless to say, their insistence to force a relationship between me and my sister just drove us apart more than anything, and understandably so. My sister never liked me because of how boring I was. How I acted like I was of my age. This wasn't like her. She was stuck in her high school phase ever since she started and ended it in not any other kind of high school phase. The one where she didn't want to work, be lazy all day long, and get into endless amounts of drama. And my parents were perfectly fine with this, as after all, she is their darling princess. Well, things continue to go this way, and somehow my sister manages to graduate high school. I had already completed my undergrad school by this time, and contact with my family had reduced substantially, at least till a point that I didn't update them about minor things in life. They didn't bother to ask, and I didn't bother to say anything. This was a blessing, honestly, because then I didn't have to hear them continuously taunt me over my life choices. During the time period I had finished my degree, I got pregnant with my son. The father of my child and I are in no contact. In fact, I have a restraining order against him. You all must be wondering why, and I'm going to explain to you exactly why. So, Axel and I met during the first year of college. During orientation. We talk and stay in contact and eventually start dating. Unfortunately, it turns out that Axel is a complete psychopath and stalked me all throughout our relationship. He has done a lot to me that is mentally deteriorating, and I will not be going into the details of the same because of the post limit, but yes, the last straw for me was when Axel messed with my birth control and I fell pregnant with my son. I was devastated because this pregnancy went against my life plans, but I still decided to keep my son because at that point it had become too late to terminate the pregnancy. Well, Axel goes full-blown crazy mode when he finds out that I'm breaking up with him and breaks into my college apartment to trash the house. His act comes to me as a blessing in disguise as my landlord had installed CCTV cameras all around the apartment for the time when all of us left for classes, and the camera had caught his entire act. This acted as proof in court and I was able to get a restraining order against him, put him in jail for 6 months, and get full custody for my son. My family knows about Axel. Just because of this entire court case and for the sake of my son. Axel is out of jail now and stays away from me. Although he often tries to communicate with me through other people, especially my family. They all often insist that I give him another try. How my son deserves a father figure in his life, yada yada. I was able to reject all these suggestions all this time, and they did not push too much into it either. So I thought all was good, but unfortunately that wasn't the case. You see, my problem arose yesterday. I work from home so I am able to look after my son and do not need a babysitter or caregiver for my son. So when I received a call from a friend of mine that a very close friend of mine was put into hospital because he got into an accident and needed financial help, I knew I had to rush into the hospital. This friend of mine is extremely close to me We have been friends since college, and he was the one who helped me with everything when it came to getting away from Axel. So I was in complete panic and knew my only option for childcare currently was my sister. My friends lived pretty far from me. My parents were at work, and my sister, who recently came back to my parents' house to live after dropping out from college, was my only option. So I called her up and told her the situation. She surprisingly acts worried and tells me that I can drop my son off. So that's what I do. I drop my son off at my parents' house, and my sister seems to be extremely normal. There seem no signs of anything weird going on, and nothing that I should worry about. I drive myself to the hospital and get in the process of looking after my friend. It takes me 6 hours to connect to his family who live a couple of states away, talk to the doctors, and make financial agreements, and thankfully all seems okay for him. So I decided to make a mutual friend stay back and tell her to call me if there is an emergency. I drive myself back to my parents' place, and to my surprise, the door is locked. I am instantly nervous knowing my sister and start to think of the worst. I call my sister over and over, spamming her phone, and for once, she picks up. I am starting to cry at this point because it took her an entire hour to pick up my call, and I can totally make out by the tone of her voice that she's drunk out of her mind. I scream at her, asking her the whereabouts of my son, and she tells me that my fiancé took my son with himself. My stomach drops because I am not in a relationship. I continue to yell at her, and she continues to give me incoherent answers. A car pulls up in front of my house between this, and I know it is not my parents' vehicle. The door opens, and I am shocked to see my son walk out. Thankfully, he seems safe and happy. He runs up to me and pulls me into a tight hug, but all this time I'm just trying to see who the person on the other side is. And there he is, Axel. His face turned white as he goes to see me, and my reaction was pretty similar. My fear soon turned into rage as I asked him what the F he had been doing with my son. He said nothing, absolutely nothing, and just got into his car and drove off. Honestly, if it wasn't for my son, I would have ran after the car. I was so angry, but I was glad that my son was okay. So I drove him home and put him to bed because it was pretty late. This is where I'm at currently. Enraged, scared, and upset. It's already tough to be a single mother, and when things like these happen, I feel hopeless and like I have no support or trustworthy people around me. I'm really not sure what my move should be as I'm still processing everything, and the guilt that is in me for leaving my son with my sister is the most overwhelming of them all. So Reddit, AITA for trusting my sister? What should be my next move? Any advice would be much appreciated. Update 1. I visited my parents today to see my sister, and surprisingly she was ready to speak. I called her out on her actions, and according to her she wasn't at fault. Because how would she know about my life since I'm so secretive? My parents sided with her here and told me when they found out about the situation they were happy for me that I had gotten back with Axel for the sake of my son. I was enraged to see how calmly they took this situation as if it was nothing. Amidst this back and forth, my sister confessed that Axel gave her a bottle of alcohol and told her that she should go relax since she seemed so stressed and that he would take care of my son. I was dumbfounded to say the least. My sister truly gave up my son for a bottle of vodka, and she knew she slipped up by confessing this as well. I'm angry to say the least and go off on her, telling her that she can now have fun without the allowance I was going to cut off that I previously gave her. This pissed my parents off as they believed that I was putting a grudge ahead of family. It was shocking and astounding to see how small they thought the situation was and how casually they took it. That is when I decided I had it. I just picked up my bag and left. I wasn't going to argue with him or anything. I just feel done. This is when my phone started blowing up with calls from my relatives, lecturing me on how I shouldn't be so hard on my sister over a minor misunderstanding. A minor misunderstanding. Leaving my son with my abuser is a minor misunderstanding to them. The rage in me took over and I gave them all a piece of my mind. In between all of this, I also received a call from Axel's mom trying to tell me how wrong I was for hurting her son. Not giving him a chance to be a better person, blah blah blah. I told her the same as everyone else. She could kick rocks for all that I could care for and just hung up. I have blocked all these numbers because I'm truly not in the mood to sit and argue with a bunch of idiots who do not have an idea what they're talking about. My current priority is my son and my friend who is still in the hospital. They are all I'm looking to care about right now. And this will probably stay the same in the future. Update 2. After a couple of weeks of thinking and a lot of visits to the police station and the court, I can proudly say that I have officially cut off my family and Axel from my life. I first decided to talk to my lawyer and explain the entire situation, and was told that I have a very strong basis to get a restraining order against both Axel and my family, after they tried breaking into my house multiple times to talk. This process took months and months of time, but finally, I am so happy to say that I was able to fully cut off my family. I have also decided to move houses as many of you all suggested in my previous update, and that's what I did. My new address, contact, and everything related to it is only available to the closest of my friends and none of my family. It feels blissful to wake up to the worries of only my son and I and not carry the weightage of my sister's drama, problems, and issues. I'm really hoping that this works out and my boundaries aren't violated by anyone. Even if they are, I will once again strongly stand up for the protection of my son. Opinion 1. NTA. Your sister needs a reality check, and unfortunately your parents aren't going to give it to her because they seem like enabling idiots. Please arrange alternative childcare for your son and protect him from the toxic freaks around you. Opinion 2. Drag Axel to court and get your restriction order revised now. Even if your son is safe with him, you never know what tomorrow would hold towards the safety of you and your son if you don't take strict action to safeguard the protection of you and your son. The parents and sisters seem just as crazy, and I would definitely reconsider my relationship with them if they're so out of touch with your life. NTA. But you would be if you don't look out for your son and enable your sister like the rest of your family. Me, F35, and my ex-husband, M34, divorced 2 years ago. We have 2 children together, F7, M5. We decided to not have the court involved in custody at all, with us mutually agreeing that the kids would stay with him and his girlfriend in our old house together on the weekdays and attend school in the suburbs. After we divorced, I moved to the city about 30 minutes away and picked them up every Friday night and spent the weekends with them. For the past 2 years, co-parenting has run pretty smoothly. We occasionally do things with our kids, have special events, or during their birthdays. Sometimes his girlfriend comes along and we are able to have a cordial relationship with one another. Okay, so this is where the dilemma begins. Last Friday, when I came to go pick up the kids, he invited me inside to talk. Basically, he says that since he's probably going to work from home indefinitely, He wants to move to his family property with his girlfriend and the kids 3 hours away in rural Wisconsin. He plans on taking the kids out of public school and have his girlfriend and his sister, who currently lives there, homeschool them. This was a plan he had originally mentioned to me back when we were together. But I had reservations moving to a rural town with my career and being close to good school districts. I am also strongly against homeschooling and believe that it does not prepare children for proper socialization skills in the future. I want an honest evaluation of whether I'm the a-hole in this situation. So I will tell you exactly how it went. As soon as I heard this, I lashed out at him, saying that if he wanted to move there so badly, he should just start a new family and leave me with the kids instead. I also tell him that this is a sick attempt to take the kids away from me. At this point, I am enraged, so I start yelling and ask him if his girlfriend and his sister are even qualified to teach them properly, how they're going to socialize and make friends, and why he would want to change things all of a sudden when our co-parenting was going so well. All he has to say is, "I knew you were going to react this way." I told him that I will lawyer up and make it unbelievably hard for him to go through with this. I took the kids for my weekend with them, barely unable to compose myself for most of the time. I feel awful for having my kids see me in a state like this, but I want them to grow up knowing that I will fight for them. I took them back to their dad on Monday, and I received a text from him today saying, "Can you please stop manipulating the kids into thinking I'm some evil monster?" AITA for lashing out in this situation. I asked my kids how they would feel about moving with their dad and his girlfriend away from me, and both of them said they didn't want to. Edit. Consulted a lawyer this morning. More context. The reason my ex-husband has the kids on the weekdays is so they can remain in the same school as they used to. School ends on 6/17, then it switches to our summer schedule where I'll have them on the weekdays and he'll have them on the weekends. Opinion 1. NTA. This is what parenting agreements are for. It's great you guys were amicable right now. But that time has passed as circumstances change. Court, of course. Moving your kids far away from you to a rural and isolated place is pretty upsetting for anyone, even if you were still in that marriage. While I understand he may want to give them more of an idyllic outdoor childhood and life, your concerns are totally valid and more realistic. Time to go to court. Maybe they can buy a summer home there. Opinion 2. I was debating whether ESH and NTA, but I'm going to go with NTA. Simply because if your ex knew that you would react this way, he should have arranged to have the conversation away from the kids, not right before you took them for the weekend. This isn't a quick chat kind of conversation, but the time that you plan when both parties have time and no kids are around. It seems like he set you up to be upset so that he could paint you as the hothead, unreasonable parent. Your concerns are definitely valid for so many reasons. Now is the time to talk to a lawyer and figure out how to prevent him from moving your kids away. I have a 26-year-old stepdaughter who we will call Kate. Kate never liked having a blended family, which I can sympathize with. She has half-siblings but doesn't really acknowledge them, and if someone asks her, she will usually say she is an only child. We tried our best, but she was just not cut out for having two blended families. She hated going back and forth. She doesn't like people in general and hated having extra people in her life. And it really came to a head when she graduated high school. She didn't want to go out and celebrate after and finally snapped at us. For her, Going out to celebrate always means bringing along a bunch of people she doesn't actually like, and she just wants to be left alone. She moved out as soon as she could and has always been very independent. She is cordial when we see her, but to be honest, she just doesn't like any of us that much. Her parents do try to connect to her, but she just isn't interested. She is getting married over the summer, and my MIL, gossipy as all hell and no boundaries, recently came to us said that she overheard Kate talking about how she fantasizes about not inviting her parents because she knows if she invites them, she has to invite her stepfather and I, and she just hates feeling like playing pretend. She said she would never actually do it, but she fantasizes about it all the time. Obviously, I was hurt, but I think Kate is entitled to her private feelings. The issue is her mother's husband said he was going to just let her have this one thing and not go. Everyone immediately praised him for being such a great guy, and then began pressuring me to just not go. Well, I'm not comfortable with that. I don't resent her for having feelings. Everyone is entitled to their fantasies. But at the end of the day, etiquette and social obligation is a thing. To me, it is about respect. You cannot just expect one half of a married couple to come alone. I nicely explained that and said really we shouldn't even be having this conversation because MIL shouldn't be eavesdropping and gossiping. My husband agreed to back me but seemed uncomfortable, and everyone else is telling me how awful I am. And that just staying home would be such a nice wedding gift for her. Opinion 1. YTA. At the end of the day, it isn't about you, or etiquette, or social obligations. It is about two people getting married and celebrating their love with whoever the F they want. The F.